with Heinz from OurPaleoFamily.com, and let me get my water bottle out of the way. And we are back with Whole30 Day 5, and I was cooking for you a little bit earlier today, making a shrimp pesto and zucchini noodle dish. I had that for lunch today, and for supper we're going to have some simply grilled cod with a pineapple mango salsa. And it's the afternoon, it's not dinner time yet, but I'm going to go ahead and make my salsa because it gets better the longer it sits. The flavors have a little bit of time to meld together. So we have some simple ingredients: pineapple, mango, jalapeno, lime juice, cilantro, salt and pepper. And I have the recipe written up, including a teaspoon of honey, and I say it's optional. It is optional. Pineapple, in my opinion, is really, really sweet, but occasionally you might get a tart one, and you might just want to add a teeny extra bit of sweetness. And even just the some of the complex flavors that are in a really good quality raw honey can add a nice flavor. But we're leaving that out because we're doing Whole30. So we're just going to tackle the all of our other goodies in this recipe, and it will be excellent, super delicious. So I'm going to start by juicing my lime, and my recipe calls for a teaspoon of lime juice, and I'm actually going to make a half recipe today because my husband, who is the leftover eater, is going out of town, and so he's not going to be here to eat it, and I don't want to have a bunch just sitting around. So I'm just going to make half a recipe. My kids don't like this. They love pineapple and they love mango, but they don't like the salsa, and I just realized I went to get my onion, then I got distracted and I forgot, so I'm going to have to run and get my onion. So this is some fresh cilantro. I only use cilantro in my guacamole and in homemade salsas. So whether it's a typical tomato salsa or a tropical salsa like this one with the pineapple and the mango. A lot of people love cilantro. They put it on everything. It's a very sharp flavored herb, and it does go great in some applications, but I just don't particularly care for it on everything. So I try to plan my meals so that I'll have 2 uses for the cilantro within about a week and a half. So I don't throw away half of a bunch of cilantro, because that would make me sad. I feel like I'm always throwing away some poor cilantro that got forgotten in the refrigerator. So my recipe calls for 1/4 cup of cilantro, and since we're doing a half recipe, I only want about 1/8 of a cup. I don't have 1/8 of a cup measuring cup, so I'm going to use my 1/4 and fill it up about halfway. So I think I got just about the right amount. If I push that down in there, that should be perfect. Yeah, it's about halfway full. Let me rinse my knife and my fingers, and I'll grab my onion. If you're doing the Whole30 along with me, I would love to know how you're doing, how you're feeling. Are you also on day 5? You know, where are you in your journey? My recipe calls for 1/4 cup of a sweet onion. I'm just going to cut this teeny little bit off. It's going to be raw, so I'm using a Vidalia onion, so it'll be nice and sweet. I remember back when we had cable and I would watch Food Network all the time. They, all the chefs on there were always saying, oh, use this red onion, it's so sweet. And I feel like red onions are so sharp and not at all sweet, so I don't know what they're talking about, but I think of Vidalia onions or like there's a Texas one. Maybe it's called Texas Sweet, something like that. Those are the typical ones that we can find in our grocery store here in North Carolina. And I do think that they're typically pretty sweet. There's a little bit of skin in there. But even still, I'm going to do my very best to cut this very thinly. So I did some thin slices, and then I'm going to go back and even cut those into teeny little bits. So I'm feeling pretty good on day 5. I have made it to day 5 in, half a dozen Whole30s. And typically I'm having some pretty serious withdrawal symptoms, lots of headaches, super duper tired, like fall asleep in the middle of a sentence when I'm trying to teach my kids something, which is kind of irritating. So I'm thankful to be feeling better this time. Okay, so here is a mango, and there are a couple different ways you can cut a mango. They have this really long, thin pit in the middle. And I should have sharpened my knife before I got started. And so again, following what our Food Network expert, professionally trained chef people say, is you just run your knife down the sides, that big pit's right in there, so you have the skin, and then you can score it and sort of turn it inside out like this. That one kind of broke on me. And then cut these pieces off. So that's an option, which, you know, if you're just dicing this up to put in a fruit salad, I think that that is not a bad option. In our particular case today, where I want this chopped pretty finely for my salsa, I'm going to end up losing some with this method, but I wanted to show it to you because it is kind of neat, and it, like I said, it would work great if you wanted kind of bite-sized pieces like this to go in a fruit salad. So this is one option, or you can simply take a vegetable peeler or a sharp knife, a peeling knife, and peel that skin away, and then slice the flesh off. So now that I have this chunk off, instead of doing that little thing where I score it and turn it inside out, I'm just going to try to take the peeling off, because it'll be easier for me to dice it up that way. It's sort of a leathery skin, I suppose, if you felt like chewing for a long time and really wanted a whole bunch of fiber, you could eat the skin, but I don't know anybody who eats the skin. If you do, woo, I would like to know. So it's kind of tough. I just poked myself with my little knife. Okay. Okay, and then there's some nice fruit along the side. Now that I've cut it that way, it's a little bit awkward, but let me cut the rest of this skin off, and then I'll try to get the rest of the flesh because I don't want to waste it. My daughter loves mango. I think not a lot, but mango is not an unusual fruit for people to be allergic to. And as some people say, it kind of makes their tongue feel itchy when they eat it. So I can feel like my finger was kind of squishing into that a little bit. So there was a little bit more of the fruit. You can tell my knife is not cutting through it quite as easily. Okay. Gosh, there is someone here. If I can peel it off and not stab myself again. Okay. You can start to see the pit down here. It's white. Alrighty, so then I just get rid of all of this. And my recipe calls for 1 mango, so I'm going to just use half. So let me chop this up for my kids to eat. And the rest of it I'm going to try to just dice really finely. Not quite as small as I diced the onion, and as you'll see me, cut up the jalapeno, but small pieces. I mean, so think salsa. No bigger than, oh gosh, no bigger than 1/4 of an inch square. But they don't have to be exact. There's no test. Just run my knife through there a couple more times. I'm saving the biggest, messiest one for last because it'll just get all its little outside parts on my cutting board, and I don't want to have to rinse it before I didn't put my cilantro in. Before I cut everything else. Okay, so 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and also the recipe calls for 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, so I'm going to do 1/8 teaspoon. And this is all to taste. This is just a guideline. You could certainly add more salt, pepper, jalapenos, whatever. I'm going to very carefully go around the edge of my jalapeno, so I take that white membrane out almost entirely because that's where most of the heat is. I know a jalapeno is a mild pepper. I am not someone who likes spice. My family in general does not like a lot of spice. But this, the level of heat that we get from the jalapeno, I love, and I love the flavor of it. I want to get those seeds off of there. Now, you do want to be careful when you're working with any kind of spicy peppers that you wash your hands really, really thoroughly when you're finished. And one time when I was making this salsa, I washed my hands like 3 or 4 times. And then an hour later, I rubbed my eye, and it still really, really burned. So it's going to take some very thorough washing to get all of that capsaicin off of your fingers. So I did really thin, really thin slices, and then I'm going to go back through with as fine of a mince as I can. I'm not professionally trained. I know I don't have technically perfect knife skills, but I'm comfortable with my knives, and so in general I'm safe with my knives, and that is what I feel is important. Okay, let me rinse. Okay, now for my pineapple, whoops, just pull some of his hair off. Oh dear, it's very ripe. We'll just cut that top off. And usually, which I just forgot to do, I'll use a serrated knife for this part because it's tough. It's a little bit of a challenge to cut through the outer skin of a pineapple. And it has these little spikes, and there are a lot of little seeds on the inside. So I may have let it get a little too ripe. We'll taste it and make sure it tastes okay. So let me get rid of all of this stuff so I have clean space to work. See all those little spikes on the outside just come off, these little bits of brown fiber. They're not going to hurt you or anything, but it's be like eating the onion skin. I don't want to eat the onion skin. So let me get all that stuff off. That part doesn't look very good right there. Any bad spots, kind of whack those out. Okay. Now I just go straight down the middle. Hold it still. My board is kind of slippery now. Whoops. And my pineapple is slippery, trying to escape. And then cut it in half. And then you can very easily just make one cut like this and get that core out. So get rid of that core. Make sure it all looks good back here. I don't have any parts I don't want. There's a little brown spot right there. I'll just take that out. It's not bad. It just was a little overripe. And again, here my serrated knife cuts right through this. And then cut down. And then I'll use my chef's knife to do a little chopping, because even at this, I cut it into thin slices, and then I'm cutting across this direction. I'm still ending up with long pieces like this, and I really want them to be more square, so smaller, slightly smaller pieces. So just give that a chop. You could certainly use a food processor, run all this through just a couple times. I just think it's a little bit therapeutic to do this chopping, and not everybody has a food processor, so I want to show you how to break down a pineapple. I know you can buy pineapple, fresh pineapple, in the produce section of most grocery stores that have been peeled and cut up for you, but it costs so much, and you can do it yourself. And you can buy a whole one for much less money. I was going to say something else. I think with a food processor, it's really easy to over process and kind of end up with mush. You don't want to end up with mush. Okay, So my recipe calls for half of a pineapple, so you can see I just used a quarter, and that's all I'm going to do for this particular recipe. But I am going to finish cutting the rest of it. My family will just enjoy eating that. And if they don't eat it all tonight for dinner, or tomorrow maybe by the end of lunchtime, I will freeze it. Pineapple freezes really, really well. I've never frozen mango, honestly, but I have bought frozen mango from the grocery store to put in smoothies, so I assume that I don't have to do anything special to it, and mango would freeze pretty well. So I could certainly cut up that mango and cut up the pineapple and stick it in the freezer, and then have kind of the main ingredients ready to make this salsa again sometime. Just cut it into bits. It's probably very sweet because it's a bit overripe. Wow, it's so good. Taste buds are probably a little bit altered already, even from just not even 5 whole days without any sugar or even a sugar substitute. I tend to do not a lot of stevia, but I drink 2, sometimes 3 cups of coffee a day, and I would sweeten that with a little bit of stevia. I've been experimenting with more desserts using stevia because it doesn't bother me. I know a lot of people are allergic to it, and some people really taste stevia as bitter. Actually, it's something like 80% of the population taste stevia as bitter, but my family does not. And so I'm able to use that as a sweetener in some desserts, and we're not spiking our insulin, our blood sugar, which is good for all of us. Okay, so let me give this a taste. Make sure I don't want to add more salt or pepper, or maybe my jalapeno was really mild and I am going to want 2 in here, even in this half recipe. So good. I'm going to add the rest of this half of lime. Give it a little bit more acidity. That's really, really delicious. It definitely does not need honey. And it will get even better as it sits the next couple of hours till dinner time. Now, if you just love garlic and you wanted to add some garlic to this, by all means, that would be delicious. I'm not in the mood for garlic, okay? So we're going to stick with the onion as our aromatic. I could literally eat the whole bowl. It's so good. Okay, so here's our salsa. It's all ready. I'm going to cover it, put it in the fridge, and then at dinner time we'll just quickly saute our cod and a whole bunch of green veggies, and that will be dinner. So see you in a little bit. Hello everybody, I'm back. It is still Whole30 Day 5, and we're finishing up our dinner. I have my pineapple mango salsa in the fridge. I'll pull that out in a few minutes. I just want to put the rest of my, excuse me, a little froggy, put the rest of my dinner together. So very simple. I'm going to just saute some fish, and I'm going to saute some veggies. So I have my big nonstick skillet here, and I'm going to put in a good tablespoon of my reserved bacon drippings from my good healthy bacon, and we'll get that melted and I'll start chopping these veggies. So have you ever had okra? Have you ever grown okra? It is, I don't know, I think maybe we think of it as a southern vegetable here in the South. They usually prepare it fried, and I have a great baked fried version of, okra on my website, and I also have an okra fritter recipe, and they're both really good. I love them both. Sometimes I'll make that fritter recipe and just have that for lunch. It's what I had yesterday, actually. These, if you grow okra, or if you're even shopping for okra, you want okra this size. You do not want okra this size, but sometimes just life, right? And I can't get out to the garden every day, and so one will hide from me, and it'll go from this to this in about a day and a half. So this one's nice and tender, and this one I can barely squeeze it, and it really won't ever get tender. So this big one has a little more give to it. I think it's going to be okay. But once they get really tough, they're tough, and there is really nothing you can do about it. I tried cooking them with the lid on. This one's really hard too. This one has a little more give to it. And you know what? There might be one piece in here that's really hard and somebody will try to eat it and be like, oh, this is too tough, and you have to spit it out, and that's all right. But I don't want to waste it. I want to try to cook it. But if I can tell that it's super tough to the touch, there's no use even giving it a try. So these will take a little bit longer to cook, so I'm going to get them in my skillet. Let me push my fat around to put at the bottom of my pan. And my heat is about on medium. This is not a super powerful burner here, so you probably want medium to medium high, depending on your stove. Let me grab my salt and pepper. So I just sprinkle a little bit of salt and pepper at each stage of my cooking process. That way I'm not having to play catch up at the end. Okay, I also have a little bell pepper from my garden. It has some brown seeds in the middle, but that's okay. We're going to take them out. I cannot eat bell peppers. I had this testing done from Cyrex Labs, and my functional medicine doctor ordered these tests. And basically, it's not an allergy test. It's more like a test of what foods are immune triggers for me. And some of them that showed up as positive, or actually they do red, yellow, and green. So a green food you're free to eat. A yellow you should not eat often, and you shouldn't eat more than maybe 1 or 2 yellow foods in a day. And then there are red foods that you should not ever eat. Some of my red foods were bell peppers. I'm going to leave these big so that it's easy for me to take them out. Zucchini, of all things, and wine. So some of those things I knew. Zucchini, I ate all the time and never felt like I had any problems. But sometimes a certain food is causing you problems that you don't really even know, or it's so subtle you don't associate it with anything that you eat. So I went without zucchini for over a year, and I have started eating it again, and I feel okay. I don't eat it every day though. And yellow squash, you know, you think of zucchini and yellow squash as being very, very similar, but yellow squash were fine, and zucchini were not fine for me. So I'm just going to stir these around. I like it when my veggies get a little brown. Brings out the natural sweetness in them. I've washed all of these already. Broccoli. Who likes broccoli? I know some people love it. I don't love it, but I know that it is good for me. And so I eat it, and I make my family eat it. And you know, actually, when I was first diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and I had gotten out of the hospital, I was very sick. No doctor could figure out what was wrong with me. I ended up having emergency surgery, and it was through that surgery and looking at the tissue that the doctors determined that indeed I had Crohn's disease. So after that, I was back in the office of my GI doc, and we're having this follow-up appointment. He's kind of giving me the rundown of, hey, this is what life with Crohn's disease is going to be like. You're going to take these drugs, and you have to eat bland food like white bread and white rice and potatoes, and think of all the foods that you know you really shouldn't eat. All the foods that would spike your blood sugar. Those are the foods that he told me I was supposed to eat. I wasn't supposed to eat nuts. I wasn't supposed to eat anything with very much fiber. Broccoli, cooked or raw, was definitely a no-no. Very few raw vegetables. And I knew nothing about holistic health, nutrition. I really didn't know anything about it at the time. And even with that lack of knowledge, listening to him give me these instructions, I thought, that is wrong. You should not tell anybody that they should be eating that way, and not eating this. Don't eat any of this is basically what I was told. And I pretty much much ignored it right from the start. And it was several years before I learned about the paleo diet and or even just eating a whole foods diet in general as potentially a way to health. But even without that knowledge from the very beginning, I didn't know anything about gluten-free, so I wasn't gluten-free by a long shot. But I didn't follow his instructions of not eating nuts and not eating most vegetables. And I don't know, maybe that's partly why I'm as healthy as I am today. You can read more about my health journey on my website. There's sort of a synopsis about me page, and then there's a longer, I believe I called it My Health Journey, the long version. Excuse me. There on my website, linked on the right-hand column. And you can read all about that. And a lot of people have told me they have identified with my situation, the struggle with seeing so many doctors. It's not like I wasn't going to the doctor. I was going to the doctor. I had every test under the sun, and they could not figure out what was wrong with me, and I was miserable. And now I've been, excuse me, let me get all my trash put away. Gosh, I think we've been paleo about 4 years now. I've been in remission from my Crohn's. I am not on any of those strong medications that they put me on. And I feel good almost all of the time. I probably have a stomach ache or a headache or even a cold less than people without this disease. So it's not lost on me. I know a lot of people with Crohn's disease really struggle and have a hard time, and I do not, and I'm very, very thankful. But I work hard at it. I don't make a lot of compromises when it comes to what I put in or on my body. We spend a lot of money for healthy food and a functional medicine doctor and supplements. It can be expensive. It's a commitment, but I figure we're just saving the money from the medical bills. Okay, so that is going. I'm going to just set this right here. I'm going to need this knife again for my fish. You brush the broccoli off of that. I need a little bit more oil in my pan. I'm going to grab my avocado oil. I just want to keep it neutral. I don't want to cook with my olive oil, and I don't have very much bacon fat left. My husband cooks his eggs in that in the morning, so I want to make sure there's enough of that left for him. So my fish is not going to take very long to cook, especially since I have lost it. Here it is. Okay, so tonight I have, fish is very, very, very expensive sometimes. Usually. Good quality fish is usually expensive. And so I buy whatever's on sale. I'm going to grab a couple paper towels. I want to get a good sear on my fish, so I need it to not be really wet. So we have a new Sprouts market in Raleigh, and they have this wild caught cod on sale. So cod is a nice mild fish. If you have people in your family who don't really like fish, it can be a nice one to start with because it has a nice meaty texture, and it'll work really well on your grill if you like to grill fish, because it is a little heartier. It won't fall apart as easily. It has a nice mild flavor, so if you have some fish haters, let them try cod. So I'm just going to salt and pepper both sides. I dried it off so it's not sopping wet. And we really everybody in my family likes fish, and we all like cod. So I'm not going to do anything to mask the flavor. I'm just using salt and pepper, and I have avocado oil in my skillet because I can heat it up to a really high temperature and get a good sear on my fish. But if you want to cover up the fish flavor a little bit, a squeeze of fresh lemon at the end, or some dill, parsley, oregano, any herb that you really like the flavor of would be great to just sprinkle on top at the end. I'm going to rinse my hands and turn my skillet on. Okay, so I can't really fit 2 big skillets on this stovetop burner, tabletop burner, excuse me. So I'm going to do a little switcheroo, and I'm going to put this skillet with the veggies over on my real stove, and I'm going to bring my cast iron skillet for my fish over here. And again, I just have about a tablespoon and a half of avocado oil in my pan. It is bubbling a little bit because a little drip of water came off of my hand. And so I'm going to let that finish heating up, and I'm going to cut my fish into nice portion sizes. This is about 1.5 pounds. We've gotten to the point, my kids are of the age that a pound of meat is typically not quite enough for the 4 of us. I usually need to go with 1.5 pounds. And if it's something they really love, like steak, shrimp, or scallops, then I need even more. But this is 1.5 pounds. I think that'll be enough. Okay, it's really smoking. So in we go. I'm going to put in my thicker pieces first. That one came apart. That's A-okay. This will really just take a few minutes to cook. This one little piece isn't going to fit. If the fish doesn't typically shrink down in time, I'll see if it shrinks down enough that I can fit that one in. Okay, so when I pulled the camera over, could you see that my thinner fillets were curling up? So that's what you'll start to see. It's curled up there on the tip. I'm just going to flip that over. It's popping a little because there's a lot of moisture in the fish, even though we blotted the top of it. Oh, it smells so good. Thank you. Thank you, helper. Put it back there, okay? I'm trying to move this around so I can get this last little piece in here. And now they're all in. And I'm going to grab a fork because I want to show you how to tell, one way to tell when it's done. Okay, my skillet was super duper hot, so I turned it down. So I need to turn it up just a teeny bit. Okay. Let's see if I can show you this. Okay, so it's flaking apart real easily right here on this edge. But in here, closer to the middle, it's not. It's not quite done all the way through. Whoops! I'm going to throw it back in the pan. And turn my temperature back up because it came way down with the when I added the cold fish. I really like to get a little color on it. And they might not all finish cooking at the same time, so I'm just going to get out a plate so I can lay them out as they get done. So here's my pineapple mango salsa I made earlier. It's been sitting in the fridge. And I told you it would get better as it set, so I better taste it and make sure I'm not lying to you. It's really, really good. Okay, so I know this little tiny piece. Let's get off of that one. Even though it's just my family, I'll get a clean fork. We'll get this piece out. That tiny little piece is done. This one's great. I'll show you how it was nice and flaky all the way through. You see that? I can really separate little flaky layers. This really thick piece. It's not quite done. There's another one that's finished. So I got the piece I put in last, and then these thicker pieces that just aren't quite done yet. Okay, see how you can see in all the little layers? It's done now. Just one more minute. It's all done. Taste this piece. Okay, so my veggies look beautiful. So everybody can get a nice big pile of those. I'll serve up one plate for you and see how nice this looks. So a whole 30, we want to really fill up our plate with veggies. Round it out with some protein, some kind of yummy sauce. Okay, there's a nice big pile of veggies. Awesome big fillet of fish. I might even come back and have another piece of fish. There's plenty. Get all of this out of here. And I'll run a little water in my skillet so it won't be so hard to clean. Let me do that real quick. This is Grandma's cast iron I'm very thankful to have. And then my yummy pineapple mango salsa. A great big spoon full of that. So much flavor. And there's our whole 30 day 5 dinner. You can find the recipes on my website, which is ourpaleofamily.com. Thanks.